The story begins not in China, but in the counting rooms of London. By the late 1700s, Britain was obsessed with Chinese luxury, tea, silk, porcelain. The problem? China didn't want British goods in return. They wanted silver, and only silver. This imbalance terrified British officials. Silver was draining out of the empire like water through a broken barrel. Imagine standing in a London tea house. The aroma of Chinese tea fills the room, but every cup represents another coin lost to the East. Britain needed a loophole, something China wanted but didn't produce. And that loophole appeared in the poppy fields of British-controlled India. Opium had been used medicinally for centuries, but Britain industrialized it. They refined it, taxed it, and then pushed it for one reason: to reverse the silver flow. The British East India Company didn't just sell opium, they engineered a global narcotics machine. Opium was illegal in China, but illegality simply made the trade more profitable. British merchants anchored offshore in receiving ships, floating warehouses packed with chests of Bengal opium. Chinese traffickers would slip out at night in narrow boats, exchange silver, and haul the drug back inland. Picture the Pearl River Delta after midnight. Fog rolling off the water, lanterns swaying on small boats, whispers in Cantonese and English. Everyone knew the trade was illegal, but corruption was deep. Local officials accepted bribes, merchants looked the other way, and addictions spread rapidly. By the 1830s, millions of Chinese citizens, farmers, nobles, even soldiers were hooked. British profits exploded. But while British merchants celebrated, Qing officials watched their empire rotting from within. Enter Lin Zexu, the Qing official who finally said, "Enough." He wrote a now famous letter to Queen Victoria, pleading, "Why do you send this poison?" He never received a reply. Lin went to Canton with a mission: destroy the opium trade. Literally. In 1839, he surrounded the foreign warehouses, seized 20,000 chests of opium, and ordered them dumped into the sea. Not confiscated, not resold. Destroyed. Imagine standing on the coast as giant pits are filled with dark, sticky opium paste, then flushed into the ocean. It was one of the boldest anti-drug operations in world history. But Britain saw this not as law enforcement, but an attack on their property and profits. The empire prepared for war. China expected a limited conflict. Britain brought an industrial war machine: steam-powered gunboats, modern rifles, advanced artillery, versus Qing junks and outdated weaponry. It wasn't a war, it was a demonstration of power. British fleets cut off coastal cities one after another. Chinese defenses collapsed, civilians fled. Smoke rose from fort walls, shattered by naval bombardments. Imagine watching British iron ships move upriver like floating fortresses. For China, it felt like the future invading the past. The war ended with the Treaty of Nanjing. Hong Kong was handed to Britain. Foreigners gained special trading rights. China paid a massive indemnity. And opium? Still illegal, but flowing stronger than ever. The door to China had been forced open. After the war, opium poured into China in record volumes. Addiction wasn't a side effect, it was policy. By the 1850s, opium made up over half of British exports to China. The social fabric unraveled. Families sold possessions to buy the drug. Productivity collapsed. Corruption spread. China's government grew weaker as Britain grew richer. Imagine walking through a Chinese marketplace, once lively, now dotted with pale, thin men reclining in opium dens. This wasn't just a drug crisis, this was an economic weapon. The British Empire had engineered one of the largest narcotics operations in human history. China's defeat set off what Chinese historians call the Century of Humiliation, a period marked by foreign invasions, unequal treaties, and internal uprisings like the Taiping Rebellion. Opium was the spark, but the consequences spread for generations. British politicians framed it as free trade. For China, it was national trauma. Imagine a country forced to watch its own weakness weaponized against it. The memory of the Opium Wars still shapes Chinese politics, nationalism, and foreign policy to this day. The story ends where it began, with global trade, addiction, and empire intertwined.